Hello, good evening, and welcome to Prog January 777. We're talking about a brand new band today. We're talking about Gentle Giant. Fantastic, fantastic band from the UK in the 70s. Um, Very much an underrated band, certainly. I guess to talk a bit of history. The band was formed out of a late 60s kind of psychedelic pop soul R&B kind of a band called Simon Dupree and the Big Sound. Now that band included the Shulman brothers, Phil Shulman, Derek Shulman, and Ray Shulman, who would become the part of the core of Gentle Giant. They had a kind of taste of success. They had a big single in England called Kites, but they kind of flatlined, and the Scottish brothers Shulman were looking for something new. Just late '60s, so '69, the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson comes out. Yes is doing their thing. Um, Procol Harum was around, so the progressive thing was starting to take off. So I guess the Shulman brothers wanted to kind of follow suit with that, so they set about forming a band. They recruited Kerry Meniere, who was keyboard player. He also played cello and percussion and whatnot. Now, Kerry Meniere was more than just keyboard player and a cellist. He was also a trained. I think he had some sort of musical training and had a degree in composition. So he was very much a musical brain kind of a guy. They also got Gary Green on guitar, who is essentially a blues guitar player, like a hard rock blues kind of a guy. And he fit in really well, obviously. He stayed in through the rest of the band's career. And then they got Martin Smith on drums, who lasted a couple of albums. They kind of had a bit of a problem with drummers at the start of their career, but they eventually settled on John Weathers a little later on. And I don't think Martin Smith was a multi-instrumentalist. He was kind of mainly the drummer. The Shulman brothers themselves, Ray was the bass player. He also played violin. Derek was kind of the hard rock, heavy lead vocalist, but he ended up playing a bit of saxophones and a few odd instruments here and there. And Phil Shulman was the trumpet and saxophone guy. So I mean, again, like all these guys had, were able to play multiple instruments. Recorders were very popular. They got to be very popular. And yeah, so anyway, with this band they got together, they named the band Gentle Giant and set about recording this fantastic debut album. Beautiful album cover. This is the era of fantastic album covers. It's just it's kind of creepy. And the album's got this kind of short story about the giant. It's kind of a fun little fable. It goes along with that whole prog rock whimsical thing. And yeah, it's a very, very strong, ambitious debut album for sure. I mean, they haven't found their sound yet, obviously, but they're ambitious, and they're certainly pushing themselves. I mean, this is a huge, huge change from what the Shulmans were doing in Simon Dupree. This is a drastic change. There's the complex arrangements. There's a lot of, they're exploring lots of different styles of music. And yeah, it's a great set of songs. So the album opens with, this is 1970, by the way. Anyway, the album opens with Giant, which is the kind of half title track, half band track. I think you could tell when they wrote it, they were probably hoping this would be like the anthem of the band. And it isn't really. It's a cool introduction to the album. There's a lot of kind of dramatic mood shifts. It kind of gets funky and groovy in some parts and some of the middle sections, and then they have this very stately, grand trumpet bit. There's a choral bit that kind of comes in too, which is very dramatic and kind of classically inspired, very English. But it gets rocking, quite a bit as well. When the bass comes in, the dun 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 dun. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of all these different styles that they're going after, and the lyrics are obviously talking about the giant. I think they're the lyrics are a bit funny. He is coming, here I'm coming, are you ready for his being? See the giant, feel the giant, touch the giant, hear the giant. I'm not sure if they're if they're literally talking about some fable of a giant, or if they're actually talking about themselves as a band. I'm not really sure, but lyrics aside, it's a cool song. Not definitive, but it's cool. Track 2, we get Funny Ways. Now this is kind of a Gentle Giant classic. This is one I've been to concerts. I went to a Rush concert, and the music they had playing before the band came on, they had a kind of a classic prog thing going on, and Funny Ways by Gentle Giant popped on. I thought that's really cool. I saw Peter Hamel and I heard Funny Ways as well. Is the background music before the bands came on. Funny Ways is really, really good. It's got obviously the first song has got Derek Shulman on lead vocals. This has Phil Shulman on lead vocals. He's a little bit of a lighter singer. Like I said, Derek is kind of the hard rock guy, and Phil is the lighter singer. Although Kerry Minnear became more of a singer later on in the band. Phil was quite good as well, and there's a lot of key early Gentle Giant songs that, what makes the songs is Phil's voice. I think that's true with Funny Ways. Got some really nice violin in there, courtesy of Ray Shulman. Very English, I mean, very, very old world. It's got this almost Baroque kind of a feel to it, and it's dark but gentle at the same time. It's got this really great kind of bossa nova section in the middle. They do this funny little chant and whatnot. But yeah, lovely little song. Move on to track 3. We get Alucard, which is Dracula spelled backwards. This is where we first see Kerry Minnear really come onto his own with the synthesizers and whatnot. Had a very unique synthesizer tone. He didn't put too many effects through it. In a lot of cases, he would just kind of let the synthesizers sound how they were. That's not necessarily the case on Alucard, because he's got some really crazy sounds going on this song. I mean, this is old 1970 technology, so I'm sure it's crazy and unreliable and whatnot, but it sounds phenomenal. It sounds really, really good. And it's got a kind of a choir backwards vocal section, which is all echoey and strange, but great bit of playing. Again, I don't think it's quite definitive of Gentle Giant, but again, it's a great song to have on a debut. It's a great it's a great sign of the band, really looking for what they wanted to do. And it's a good song. Then we have Isn't It Quiet and Cold, another Phil Shulman song. Again, it's kind of like chamber music. It has this very old world English kind of a feeling to it, I guess. It's kind of, and then the guitar bit's almost kind of nice. It's got this little jazzy swing to it. Martin Smith on the drums playing around with the brushes. It's a lovely little song. And then that's the end of the first side. Now, in between the songs on this album, they've got this funny little synth line, this that's trying to thematically link everything together or not, but it's just kind of the quirky little thing that is on this first album. Side 2 opens with Nothing at All is what it's called. And that's kind of a forgotten classic. It's really not typical of Gentle Giant. I think it's ultimately a little too simplistic to be typical Gentle Giant, but I think it's a beautiful song. Really, really like the arpeggiated acoustic guitar part, and then the kind of funky guitar riff kind of creeps in under that. Really, really nice vocals. Kind of typical of late 60s, early 70s folky kind of stuff. And of course, that funky riff turns into a full-blown hard rock riff, and that all eventually goes into a mad drum solo, which extends the song to like 10 minutes or something. In the middle of the drum solo, Kerry Minnear throws a reference to I'm not sure what it is. It's a classical piece, but he kind of throws that in there, and then it all kind of winds its way back, and the song comes back in, and I ultimately I think the drum solo section probably hurts the song a little bit, but it's a sign of the times. I mean, bands were just they were kind of doing that. They didn't they and especially a band like Gentle Giant that was not really concerned commercially whatsoever. They weren't concerned for commercial success for right up until close to the very end of their career. But I think Nothing at All probably would have benefited if they took the drum solo out and just kept the song, because I think the song itself is very strong. Can possibly be one of the best on the album. But again, not typically Gentle Giant. Then the second song of side 2, this is really kind of the closer, is Why Not? And this is like really, Baroque blues is what it is. It's got that hard rock blues kind of a thing going on. But then with this, again, like it was a Baroque classical thing going through the whole song. And it's also notable. It's got the debut of Carrie Meniere, the vocalist. And as I was saying, Phil Shulman's voice is lighter than Derek's. Well, Carrie's is even lighter. I mean, his voice was so light that he didn't even sing live because he didn't project enough. He's got this very ethereal kind of a voice. But it's really, really beautiful, I think, in a lot of cases. I mean, particularly later on in their career when they were doing some of their other stuff, slightly more commercial stuff. I mean, his voice is just magic. It's so light, but it's like I said, it adds so much to the music. And he just has a quick little verse on Why Not on the song. But like I said, it's notable because it's the first time we hear his voice. Yeah, again, it's typical of the album that the band hadn't found themselves, and there's nothing really on here that is an absolute standout Gentle Giant classic, with the exception of maybe Funny Ways. But it's a notable historical document, and like I said, for a debut album, 1970, it's fantastic. The album finishes off with The Queen, which I always thought that was probably like a little reference to how Jimi Hendrix was doing the Star Spangled Banner. Of course, Hendrix was doing it, in a completely wild, relentless, hard rock, metal, psychedelic mayhem version of the Star Spangled Banner, whereas the Queen on this album is basically just a cover. They just played their anthem with all their traditional instruments, and I get it's a nice little sign off, but it's not really. They do kind of put a little bit of a blues bit to it, and Gary Green has a little kind of blueses up the melody to God Save the Queen, but it's nothing too special, just a little sign off. And then the synthesizers, kind of the doom doom doo doo doo. I think that comes up one more time, and that's the end of the album. So yeah, like I said, not definitive, but great debut, and much better stuff was yet to come. Very soon, in fact. So stay tuned next time for that. We're going to talk about the second Gentle Giant album, Acquiring the Taste. See you then.